شوف الراجل ده بيقول ايه.
قول يا عم. قدامك 10 دقايق تخلص.
هم 5 دقايق.
هو يوم مش معانا. قول.
السؤال الأولاني بس the one thing I want to ask if everyone to make this as clear because I'm only going to talk about because I'm going to basically give the whole outline for everything, right? I'm just going to talk about the things that we may not agree on but are true anyway. Uncle Maggie said everything, we basically agree with everything he said. Some of the things I will say you may not agree with. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's the teaching of the church. Okay? First question, is heaven a gift or a reward? Maybe specific. Is heaven a reward you get when you have good behavior? You earn heaven by your good behavior. A, I wanted people to raise their hand. B, heaven is a free gift God gives you regardless of who you are as a person. So that's A, and that's B. I'd like every person to raise their hand. A, heaven is a reward I earn based on my good behavior. Any hands? Okay. Okay, very good. Second one, heaven is a free gift God gives irrespective of who I am. Okay, nobody cheats. Not the other. Okay. ما ينفع واحد. عايز اقول لك ليه لازم يكون واحد.
انا هي هديه ربنا مديها لي لكن لازم اعمل حاجه عشان اخدها. ما ينفعش واحده.
صدقيني بس trust me. مش هقول حاجه غلط. I promise you كل كلامي جاي من حاجتين. من the say this in Arabic, I'm sorry. The معظم قصة بابا عن النعمة and the book in English by Father Tadeusz Melty, who was one of the foremost experts in the church on the subject, called The Divine Grace. This is the teaching of the church. Heaven itself is a free gift that can never be earned regardless of any good behavior we do. Nothing anyone said, I know sometimes we tell little kids, like we were making this point now, behave well, that's nice. I'm not a mom, I don't know what moms tell kids. But the teaching of the church is the following. Okay? That part is really important. Before we jump to the second part, I know we're always very eager. Why are we very eager? Because we're afraid of Protestants. Okay, just to be honest, I'm not afraid to say it, neither should you be. We're afraid of Protestants because Protestants say, okay, we're saved, I don't have to do anything, and I'm just going to heaven automatically. We're so afraid of them saying that we don't teach the proper first half of the truth. Rabbi Nathan in our seminary classes would sometimes tell us the devil is not interested in telling us lies, sometimes. He's sometimes interested in telling us half-truths. Half-truths. The first half of the truth that we must digest, and not only just digest, but like it has to blow us away as servants. If this half of the truth that God gave a gift, free, and not just regardless of who I am, but in spite of me being a sinner, in spite of me messing it up, everything, doing it all wrong. If that half isn't something we digest, then we can't teach kids. And we will teach the other side of the spectrum. Like, the spectrum here, we said Protestants, Khalas, I'm saved and I do nothing. The other side of the spectrum is Islam. In Islam, God is your master. For you as a slave, try to earn God's good graces. Well, maybe God will forgive you, maybe He won't. Orthodox Christianity, the full truth of the matter, is like an example of a door. When Jesus said, I am the door. So, this door can never be opened by any means. And God opened this door despite me being a sinner. My choice, like we all know, we know the second half of this truth, is I can choose not to walk through the door. We know that part, right? But the first part is really important. And the reason why this whole conversation even started, like we mentioned to you last week, is because we took that survey in the class and asked the kids, who do you think, if you were about to start to die today, would you go to heaven? And how every single kid said they would go to hell. And that has to be a terrifying answer because it's wrong and it's not our teaching. When an Orthodox bishop was asked this question, someone Protestant asked him, hey, are you saved? Orthodox bishop, are you going to heaven? And he rationalized in the sermon, he said, if I say no, then I'm rejecting the work of baptism, I'm rejecting the work of the Eucharist, I'm rejecting the work of God that He's done my whole life. So I can't just say no. And if I just say automatically yes, then it means it's somehow something like a flu shot. I took a shot, and I'm going to heaven. So it's neither that, neither this. So what is the proper then understanding? And maybe if we have a minute or two, I'm going to just run through some things. It's literally going to be 2 minutes, I promise. I'm going to run through the slides real fast. An interesting thing about the fall, I'll come back and discuss it in detail, but did you know that the same way that we say we are not just saved, we are being saved, we also, the fall was not static. We didn't just fall, we were falling. So that's describes it this way. And this explains when people ask, how are typhoons going on in the world? Because the fall affected the entire universe. Typhoons would happen in the Philippines, or earthquakes, or things, because the cosmos itself, the world itself, fell. The world, not just humanity, the entire cosmos, the entire universe, didn't behave the way it should. That's the thing about the fall. And if you define salvation as communion with Jesus himself. Well, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. This is just, I'll send you this presentation if the server thing allows me to. Salvation being communion with Jesus, we'll skip this slide. Here's an important slide. When we say we are, sometimes another expression that is used by other denominations, we don't think we should use it as a verse, that we are saved by grace. This is still an Orthodox teaching. Our teaching is we are saved by grace through faith that works. Because a true faith is a faith that works. And it shouldn't even be like a controversy about it. It shouldn't be hard to understand. C.S. Lewis describes it as like two blades of a scissor. Sometimes we in the church, we like one blade over another. We like the blade of works. Hashem, we're afraid. Like I remember one servant who was one of my mentors, when he was speaking in the church 20 years ago, people told me, that was like the Kalinshkina on God's love. Because the kids will take advantage of God's love. You can't talk so much about God's love. People really say that to him. Because you have to talk about God's discipline and how God has standards. The reality is God has high standards and high mercy. If you don't think about God's standards, you think God likes sin and you can just do sin. If you forget about God's mercy, you think, like one of the kids who said to us today, well, I think we're all just going to go to hell. Even the monks, even the holy people who do good stuff, they think they're going to hell. And that's what our kids think sometimes. Is the monks, even the spiritual people, because they are diligent and repentant and spiritual, that they think they're going to heaven. But they don't. Even this guy doesn't think that.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you explain that to them without having them think that they can just go around and do whatever they want? Because in the end, I understand that, we should teach them that, heaven is not impossible to, but at the same time, I feel like they would take it as, I can just do whatever I want.
Okay, very good question. Everyone got the question? How do you explain it to a kid so he doesn't abuse it? It's not that we're going to tell the kid that heaven is just, well, it's not impossible. Heaven is impossible. That has to be clear to a kid. For the kid to really, grasp first the truth part of gratitude. The kid has to understand, no matter how small, whatever analogies you want to use, whether you want to use the prodigal son analogy, you want to use Christmas, for Christmas, for example, if you buy a kid a toy, like a new iPad, this little baby kid could never earn an iPad. He's 9, he's going to maybe work his whole life, but you're giving him a gift of an iPad. Or whatever gift, right? The idea is, A, heaven is impossible. Impossible. And the only reason it's possible is God opened this door. He opened this door that we can't open. Then the second question then, that we're all really, really afraid of, that the kid's going to be like, woo, I'm going to heaven. Now I'm going to go, smoke crack. That's what, we think that's what every kid's dream is. Now I know I'm going to heaven, now I'm going to go be silent. You like that? That's But the reality is, when a kid has hope of, like the man is saying, my natural position is heaven, then this is where I should walk, then this is who I am. I'm a heavenly person, and again, the fact that God opened an impossible door, but God will not throw me through an impossible door. God opened the impossible door, and it's my choice to walk through the impossible door. But without getting those parts clear, then we won't appreciate the work of grace. So that's the big part about this. Grace being a gift, not a reward. There are rewards in heaven, just to be clear. Okay? But this is also even a distinction of how we define grace versus other denominations. Other denominations say that grace is just forgiveness, because the main issue for them is sin. Because just to give you a quick background, Martin Luther was a Catholic monk. His whole problem was, I'm a sinner, I need forgiveness. In Orthodox Christianity, we say, okay, we need forgiveness, but forgiveness is the beginning. Khalas habibi, khalas kayf forgiveness, because we got bigger things to talk about. Like any relationship with father and son, my goal in my relationship with my dad is that my dad forgives me. No. Our goal is to have an ongoing, great relationship, hang out, play ball. Does that make sense? So grace is God giving us Himself. And it's basically, I want us to think about the sacraments as ways of God to pour out grace on us. So much grace, grace, grace. Grace being God giving us Himself, despite the fact that we don't deserve that. And that's sacramental life. Another thing I want to show you is that it's personal, not accidental, and also not just communal. In the Orthodox Church, for us, salvation, we talk a lot about how everyone is saved, but God is interested in saving you, the person. And that's why we ask that survey those kids individually, and that's why I wanted to share with you this. In the church, what's important for us also, when we're baptized, is the personal proclamation of our faith. When we're baptized, it's done on our behalf by our parents. Mom stands there and makes this vow of renouncing Satan, Akadat Ayo Shaitan 3 times, and then confesses Christ. But this is a vow that we need to renew as adults. Raise your hand if you've read this vow ever. Okay, some people good. Raise your hand if you have never read the baptismal vow said on your behalf by your mother. I haven't. This is the first time I've read it. We owe it to ourselves to read this, because this is a vow, this is a promise, it's a prayer that if the mother doesn't pray it, we don't get baptized. Or when it takes us away and asks us for like foster parents. Right? It's that serious, because if you're not going to agree to this is the bad side, the renouncing Satan, and the positive side of confessing that you accept Christ. This is another thing we're afraid of Protestants, just to be honest. Because Protestants at the end of the sermon, you'll raise your hand or come down the aisle if you accept Christ. Mesh, fine, we don't do that. But in the Orthodox Church, every single person who is baptized has to make a personal profession of faith. And if we haven't as adults, then we need to renew our vows. The church teaches us that confession and repentance are the renewal of baptism. One church father says even more powerful than the waters of baptism. This vow is important for me and you to take as servants, to read, to pray, to think about. So that the kid can also take and think and read and pray. We gave it out, we printed out copies and gave it to every single kid. And we said to them, we're not saying that just by having this, it's automatic, but here's your vow, and if you believe it, pray it. If you don't believe it, whatever. But we owe it to ourselves to go, and there are a couple of other sacraments that are, because if they're understood as God giving us grace, we'll understand them clearer, but we don't have time to go through them. There's ordination, which is chrismation. There's the food of immortality, like Alchem said, which is the Eucharist. This one, a quick question, we won't get into it, but I want to ask you this. Does the sacrament of the unction of the sick always work? Raise your hand if you think it ever works. If you raise your hand if you say, it always works. Raise your hand this way. If you can say this, the sacrament of the unction of the sick always works. Raise your hand. Anyone?
In spiritual way.
Don't, just 3 questions, I just want to know. Does it always work? We have 3 hands raised of yes. Raise your hand if you say it doesn't always work. Just practically, it doesn't always work. Raise your hand if you don't have a hand. Just like, okay, very good. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. خذي راحتك.
It always work من أنهي فيو؟
أيوة.
فيو بتاعتي ولا فيو بتاعت ربنا؟
هو ربنا يبقى المهم في الموضوع ده.
طيب الفيو بتاعته ممكن تكون different عن الفيو بتاعتي.
بس يبقى كويس قوي لو بنعرف ايه الفيو بتاعته.
افرض الفيو بتاعته إنه فلان ده مش حبش يموت.
Well, that's the thing. الفيو بتاعته actually it's explained. هو ايه الفيو بتاعته؟ بس احنا بنinvent what his view is. بس مش لازم invent. عشان ايه الهدف بتاع الساكرمنت دي؟ What I'm trying to say is that we don't understand the goal of the sacrament. We don't understand the headed of the sacrament. We think this is last resort. Doctors came, خلاص, okay, come do oil. وربنا يسهل, maybe he'll get healed. No. If you read any commentary on the sacrament, and I'll tell you, I'm the first to admit to you that I misunderstood all of the sacraments put together. That's why I'm trying to read so much to see, like, oh my God, I don't know anything. The goal of this sacrament is not physical healing. If it was, think of it this way. All the other sacraments, we say, does the Eucharist work every time? Yeah, we always get the Eucharist. Does baptism work every time? Yeah, there's always salvation through baptism. The goal of this sacrament is to change pain, to change illness, the way Christ changed it. Our teaching in the church is not that we go through life without pain, right? It's that Christ came and changed what pain is, to make it a way of communion. The goal of every sacrament is communion. Every sacrament, the goal of it is communion. The goal of this is not physical healing. The goal of baptism is not whatever. The goal of marriage is not cool pictures with the thing. The goal of every sacrament is communion. And unless we understand that correctly, then we miss every single sacrament. Does that make sense? So sometimes there's physical healing, of course. Of course, sure. But that is not the goal, at least not the primary goal. Because the primary goal, God offers it every single time. 100% of the time. We just don't get the benefit of it 100% of the time. Does that make sense?
Even in this sacrament, they say this one very clear.
Yeah.
كان فعل خطية تغفر له. If he did a sin, will be forgiven. Thus they say that for any sick person, أبونا بيجي ويصلي العيان.
Right.
That's one. The core of this sacrament is if he did sin, will be forgiven for him.
Absolutely. We can skip this. Last slide. What I wanted to ask us as servants, and what we could also ask as youth, is are we being saved? Because we have two options in this life. And neither of them are static. We are either being saved or we are being killed. We are either living or perishing. They're both dynamic, but they're both our options. Cool. Sorry to run through it kind of quick. Any questions? Is the idea of reward versus gift clear?